Well, my friends, we progress. We are now on 1.22.0 release candidate 5, which is headed Fishing Mechanisms, Metalwork and More. And I have to say that I'm beginning to think that the devs design and write their upgrades just to amuse me as well as inform me. Now, it looks to me as if they've done quite a lot of work on servers. It says here, a tweak, minor improvements to server TPS on large multiplayer servers. They have stopped the game freezing when many blocks started falling. Wow, can you imagine being in the middle of a sand collapse or gravel collapse and your game freezes? There's rather a worrying upstairs, downstairs sort of announcement for server owners, a quick little solution to tell apart your server staff. They're going to have a cyan coloured staff prefix. I love that word. Staff, haha. And then we have a simple AFK kick timer for game servers. Now these all come with quite complicated commands with them, which I'm not going to try to repeat. Now one thing I'm really glad of, the bear seeking ranges have been reduced as I stand here in my fantastic polar bear skin armour. Apparently the bear attack ranges are now shorter and different for different sizes of bear. I think that means that the bigger the bear, the bigger the range, so polar bears will have a greater range than the tiny sun bears. That would seem very logical. It says, oh gosh, they've been having a go at fishing again. My simple love of chucking a worm in and getting a fish back. Oh no, 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 no. Listen to this. They have reduced the meat and bone drops for some fish, and many of the smaller fish that previously yielded a bone will now yield none. Well, I've never seen a small fish without a bone. Some of them are just skin and bones. But apparently, in Vintage Story, no bones for small fish. Presumably they're thinking they're like whitebait, that you fry them and eat them whole. I don't know if you call them whitebait internationally, but there are some tiny fish you do that with. They've also had a go at the bait. Doe stink bait is now a separate bait type from other meat-based stink baits. The output of stink bait cooking recipes is reduced, and a red meat and poultry will produce more stink bait than doe or other meats. So somebody is spending a lot of their life changing the stink bait recipes. I'd never even heard of stink bait till this update, I tell you. But then I'm not a fisher person. Many of you are. Now, there's one I don't understand. It says theatre arm clothing fully implemented. So whatever that is, I don't know. I suspect it's a visual one. They're also still working on shelves, and they're saying shelf displayable attributes added stroke improved for ceramic bowls, pots, crocks, ingot moulds, oil lamps, nails and strips, poultices and bandages, including stacking, that's going to be interesting, where appropriate. They've also added shelf displayable attributes for crucibles, flower pots and jugs, even though they don't fit on the current cabinet shelving. I think this is pretty good stuff actually. The storage is going to get better and better, and I like that. I really think that's going to add a lot. The server stroke stats command now no longer includes connecting players in the current player count, okay? Now they're still having problems with support beams. It said they should have fixed, they think, the rare support beams errors causing player disconnection and fixing support beams sometimes placing incorrectly invisibly or with question mark textures. So it looks like they're still working on beams. And also one error that I've had, they have fixed the errors when a worm grunter stick reaches 0 durability. Excellent. Also, they fixed the error log spam from hidden clothing parts when wearing armour. I mean, clearly one's clothing is screaming from under this armour to be noticed. Now, there was a crash when you were trading and the buy and sell amounts were equal. It would cause no money to be transferred. And there is apparently a game crash caused by gnats. Now, I know that in places like the Everglades, if you send a cow into the Everglades, they could be eaten by the mosquitoes and just reduced by the mosquitoes. But I had never thought gnats would be that problematical. But you can no longer have a game crash caused by gnats. And you can't have a game crash caused by ground storage. That's two good ones to solve. And they've also prevented a server crash on exception in behaviour, body temperature and log additional information. So they're trying to stop the world descending into mayhem. The one I think I would love to have known about is that stones thrown straight up used to get stuck in midair. They've solved that. And also the bowl water splash particles weren't coloured correctly. I have seen those particles and not noticed any problem. Some people have very, very good eyes. They really do. Right. So, one thing I'm quite interested in is the serif grin face and kind face have been swapped. So my face is now, I've always had a kind face, but it's been borrowed from the grim face, I think. There we go. Sorry, grin, not grim, grin. And we're still dealing with berry bushes. Berry bushes will properly randomise their appearance. And one that I've had, dropped items forever rotating even when colliding with the ground. I had that with a piece of firewood recently. And the other thing is, some small fish would appear to leave behind bones when ground processed, but when picked up, no bones would appear in the inventory. Okay. And there's one here which I think is a horrendous bug that they fixed, which is iron blooms did not always have enough metal voxels to make a full ingot. That is a bad bug. I'm glad they fixed that one. They have prevented an exploit where two small water wheels can be placed overlapping in the same stream. I tell you, some of you out there, you are really into maximising these fast streams and putting as much power in as possible. And it looks like the devs are sort of, working very hard to stop you. There's a seriously jaw-dropping one here. They have fixed animals still able to multiply with dead males nearby. I find that pretty disturbing. And then another one is that someone has been complaining that psychedelic mushrooms would not properly get you high when used in a meal. Guys, well. They've been working at berry bushes again. Berry bushes would not properly save and load the amount of time it took to transition to the next stage of growth. Wild berry bushes would incorrectly pretend to be young when spawned. We have a saying in England, if someone's trying to look younger than they are, that they are mutton dressed as lamb, and clearly the berry bushes pretending to be young when spawned. But then grown berry bushes would not have a young stage. There you are. In addition to that, young berry bushes would not use the proper graphics. Shame on you. And the thin-skinned and thick-skinned berry bush traits were accidentally swapped. Berry bushes would not properly pause their growth when below or above the pausing growth temperatures. Goodness me. That is a lot to sort out. And clearly the berry bushes have had a mind of their own. They fixed the bug where farmland wouldn't recover while growing, instead recovering when the crop was ripe. I find that quite interesting. There's more on boats. Rollers placed inconsistently based on a player's orientation. That's been sorted out. The clay forming GUI still said bowls could be made into lamps and had no descriptions for tiles or lamp bodies. There you are, you see. They still want to be lamps, these bowls, but unfortunately they are reduced to just bowls. Raw and fired but empty lamp bodies showed the wick. Yes, I've noticed that myself. I've got lamp bodies that are empty and show the wick. But they fixed that apparently. They have fixed that non-ruined metal gates were not dropping themselves when broken. And sturdy backpack buckles would sometimes have texture conflicts with necklaces. My goodness, who amongst us has not got a backpack strap tangled up with their necklace? I think that's perfectly reasonable, but it has now been made so that they cannot conflict with each other. They have fixed that rotten, very rotten and very aged support beams had grid recipes. Despite dropping nothing when broken, they're not meant to be obtainable. The game showed a confusing error when certain files were missing. Now it explains that it needs a reinstall. Oh my goodness. Right, various multiplayer server fixes. Your fixed is able to queue up in the player join queue multiple times. Fixed, overloaded server sometimes adding duplicates of the same player to the connection queue. Gosh. Fixed, made file logging thread safe. Might fix garbage data written to logs on large servers. And they fixed a crash when starting a standalone server after removing certain roles. Okay, they fixed a large connection queue affecting how many players can join. They have fixed the connection queue only processing when a player leaves. And they have fixed the modded whitelist that didn't work properly for some mods. Interesting. They fixed a wonky list client's output. Now prints all clients sorted by connection state. And then there's a couple of API fixes. The psychedelic properties of food were not synced from server to client. This sounds like a supply chain of psychedelic food from server to client. I'm sure it's not, but it doesn't half sound that way. And also they fixed that the food nutrition properties saturation loss delay was unused. Wow, that is a lot of amazing fixes for amazing problems. I can't believe the depth of what they're dealing with. Anyway, seeing as I now have a different face, which I think looks okay, I shall now go and play and see how these work out. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, leave a like and perhaps consider subscribing to me. Goodbye, my friends.